All right, everyone, it is a minute past. I know that some folks are still filtering through, but let's kick off. So welcome to the AM RSF Open Invitation Seminar for September 2022. So a little bit about the RSF. Many people, as we know, have multiple health conditions, and yet surprisingly, little is known about how to identify and treat multiple long-term conditions. The NIHR has pledged 23 million directed in towards the research and use of AI to investigate multiple long-term conditions. That is the AI for Multiple Long-Term Conditions, or AIM program, to establish research and better understand and treat multiple long-term conditions. This series is hosted by the Alan Turing Institute in collaboration with the University of Edinburgh and Swansea University, as we are supported and funded by the NIHR to form a dedicated research support facility, or the RSF. The full title being the AIM RSF. We've been established to support and facilitate activity across all of the independently funded AIM research projects, the AIM Consortia. To learn more about us at the AIM RSF and the monthly seminar series, please visit us at the Turing website under the Research Projects AI for Multiple Long-Term Conditions Research Support Facility. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This talk will be recorded, but the discussion afterwards will be not, and we will not be storing the information from the chat. So please make use of the chat function. We will be using the chat to ask questions of our presenter. So please post any questions as they come up, and Lindsay Cross, who is our Theme 4 co-lead, will make note of them to ask at the end. You can also ask questions by raising your hand at the end during the discussion. And please, if there are any issues, report them to myself, Sophia, or to Dave Chapman after the session. As with all of our events, they fall under the Turing Code of Conduct and Policy Guidelines. You can find more information about these guidelines at the link posted on this slide. But mostly we're really excited to have you here. How to keep engaged with our research project. We have multiple events going this month, but on a whole, we have a program webpage, which I mentioned previously on the Turing website. We host monthly seminars on a variety of topics that are largely driven by suggestions from our community. We also have program showcases, which highlights the research going on within your projects. And we have a Slack group to form some of our communication channels with the program. A little bit ahead of next month, so our next RSF seminar will be on Tuesday, the 11th of October, again at the same time, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. So, Meg Doherty is visiting us and speaking today. She is the Director of Research Experience at the National Institute of Health over in the US's All of Us Research Project. She will be talking us through human-centered design processes for embedding patient and public voices into the research setting. So Meg, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sophia. And hello, everyone. I'm going to take a moment and share my screen. Find the play button and get to this first page. Awesome. It's such a great pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon. I met Sophia a few months back, and we started talking about human-centered design and our love for putting humans at the middle of everything that we do. And then she introduced me to this phrase of PPIE, which was something I hadn't heard of. It's not an equivalent we have in the US, but I'm happy to share that we have lots of overlap, and I'm happy to share some of our experiences at the All of Us Research Program with you this afternoon. So embedding human-centered design in the research setting. I'll first start with our agenda. I do best when having a conversation. So please ask questions throughout. We can speak, but I'll run through my slides and we can have plenty of time at the end as well. But to give a brief introduction to myself, a background on human-centered design as we define it, and then a case study of how HCD works at All of Us Research Program. And then I want to share some tips on how to adopt HCD in your project and your research programs that you have in front of you. So who am I? As Sophia mentioned, I'm the Director of Research Experience at All of Us Research Program. I'm also a 2022 Software Sustainability Institute Fellow. My fellowship is based in the UK, which brings me here to you all, but my focus is how to bring human-centered practices into the research software development lifecycle. So with many research projects nowadays, there is some software component to that project. So really trying to bridge those two gaps, which fits well to my educational background, both in public health and software engineering. My other affiliations, I'm a proud mentor and expert with Open Life Sciences, and as of last week, a new member of the Society of Research Engineering. My professional aspiration is likely shared with many of you on the call, is to build sustainable communities of practice that emphasize equitable research programs and software. I don't think, as I mentioned, research programs and software can't really exist separately nowadays. So quick introduction to what is human-centered design. We'll begin with the ISO definition, and I'll read it directly from the screen here. Human-centered design is an approach to interactive systems that aims to make systems usable and useful by focusing on the users, their needs and requirements, and by applying human factors or ergonomics and usability knowledge and techniques. This approach enhances effectiveness and efficiency, improves well-being, user satisfaction, accessibility, and sustainability, and counteracts possible adverse effects of use on human health, safety, and performance. And the image to the right, you can see users at the center of the context of use, their own requirements, design solutions, and ultimately evaluation of the system. So when preparing this talk, I thought, well, let's look at PPIE, patient and public involvement and engagement. And the definition I pulled here, the closest truth that I found, if anyone has a better source, let me know. But the 2017 NHS policy on PPIE, where NHS England believes that by listening to people who use and care about services, it can understand their diverse health needs better and focus on and respond to what matters to them. And by prioritizing the needs of those who experience the poorest health outcomes, NHS England has more power to improve access to services, reduce health inequities in communities, and make better use of resources. So if we look at those two concepts side by side, it becomes very clear very quickly that we have very similar aims and outcomes. We really want to listen to people and understand their lived experiences before producing solutions for them and building with them along the way, with the outcome of reducing community problems and allowing for the patient and public involvement to make better use of resources that exist. And generally the overall well-being, satisfaction, accessibility, and sustainability on the HCD side are those measurable outcomes that I think, and I'm starting to see the overlap with the PPIE systems. So a brief aside, this could be a whole talk in itself, but the consequences of skipping human-centered design. These are two examples, but there are many. When we don't include people throughout the design process, we're likely building something that is not fit for purpose, and in some cases can be harmful. Most recently, in the news, we saw some racial differences in detection of fever using temperature measurements and systems. So when we don't engage with not just our end users, but a broad, diverse group of our end users, we have some pretty significant consequences. And on the left, you'll see a popular project management software where the options between watching something and looking along and deleting something are really close to each other. And if your thumb's the size of mine, you may slip up and delete someone's work without realizing it. So it's really important that not only we include people in the conceptual phase of our design, we include them throughout into the delivery of our services. Just a quick overview about the traditional HCD activities. So back to the ISO definition, there are four activities in human-centered design. Again, it's that context of use, specifying the user requirements, producing design solutions, and then evaluating the design. And popularized in a lot of startups, you'll see the BML methodology, build, measure, learn. And so if you're taking some tips and tricks away today, the build and measure, learn loop gets you to the same place. It's just making sure that you're learning continuously and iteratively as you're designing something, and you're not waiting until the end to learn from your end users, but they're built in at the beginning. Ooh, something's happening with my slides, so let me just give it a sec. Okay, so pause here. Those first few slides are just to get people on the same page about human-centered design and what it is and how it encompasses many elements of PPIE. But I wanted to pause before I move into an explanation of the All of Us research program to see what questions people have about human-centered design and how it works in the research setting. Read the question.
So Meg, we've got a question about if you can reflect on how long ahead projects should plan for engagement, how often when it comes to public and patient kind of engagement from your experience.
Yeah, planning ahead. Plan ahead as much as you can. You know, there are many projects that I know that you all are a part of, and I've been a part of myself, where you may find yourself in the middle of the project and you don't have that infrastructure in place to collect feedback and to integrate your users. So I would say ideally plan far ahead as soon as you're even getting the funding or you're putting together the proposal, putting together that plan in your proposal of how you're going to budget for human-centered design, what's the infrastructure that you need to build, and then oftentimes who are the staff that you need to hire. You may have some people who are on staff who can cover the job, but as you grow in complexity, what are the specialty roles that are needed for this type of work? So yeah, early as much as possible, but it's okay if you're in the middle of it. It's always good to just get started as soon as you can.
We've got another question about how much do different translation of user interfaces kind of come up in this work or in face-to-face interaction fluency?
I do better if I can read the question. I'm sorry. Can you translate? Are we talking translations?
I can. Sorry about that. Yeah, just if you know, if let's say it's participants in a study and you are hoping to have a representative demographic within a particular population, and sorry, I'm not sure if that's too broad a topic that's not close enough for this. That's why I tried to put it as a post in the chat rather than a raise my hand. But yeah, that was partly where I was coming from. And you know, for the sake of say participation in a study, the range of, I mean, I think there's lots of elements to that, not just language, but that seemed like one of the most concrete things, especially if it's a web app, and whether that's one of the kind of goals or topics. And
yeah, definitely. I'll reflect on the disability justice movement, for us, by us. And it's really important as we're thinking about human-centered design that who we're building for and with a representative of that community. So we take a lot of care, and there's a lot of work that we're exploring about worker-led design or community-led design. So almost we move ourselves into a functionary infrastructure group, whereas the end community can conduct the research themselves. So I would say the focus and the movement is towards nothing for us without us.
Okay, cool. And so is it, I guess, if all of the researchers, for example, are only fluent in English, but the hope to have more participants, to reach out, to have more collaborators, to, you know, even just help on the translations of the user interface or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. We currently, for the All of Us research program, we have Spanish speakers who are on staff and work on the recruitment of Spanish speaking participants.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's another question about how are non-technical persons involved in the design of a research project. I don't know if you want to speak to that now or kind of use your talk to highlight that.
Yeah, let's hold on to that, but make sure if we don't get into detail, I'm happy to describe more. The whole principle of bringing this to you all is that anyone should be able to understand each other and develop solutions together. No technical skills required. At some point, there will be a feasibility assessment, but that always comes later.
I've got another question in the chat, but I think we'll save that to the end of the discussion piece. So please take us away.
Awesome. All right. So just to switch gears and let you all know, the setting that I'm coming from. So the All of Us research program, our mission is to accelerate health research and medical breakthroughs, enabling individualized prevention, treatment, and care for all of us. So if you haven't heard of us, we're nurturing partnerships across the US to enroll at least 1 million participants who reflect the diversity of the US. And as a result, we're beginning to deliver one of the largest, richest biomedical data sets broadly available and secure for researchers. And we have a big focus on our partners in our community-based organizations, which I'll talk about in a little while. But our whole program is built around a culture of core values. And our first core value is participants as partners. And I can't say enough how much that comes up in all of our daily choices and decisions that we make as a program. Whenever something feels like we need to make one choice over another, the first gut check is always participants as partners, our participants partners in this decision that we're making. So I'm proud to be part of this incredible program. And then ultimately where I sit in the researcher experience, we're combining many different data types that are not always available in the same data set for researchers to leverage. And we follow participants as they grow and move over time. And we're moving to a cloud-based system, or our researcher workbench is in the cloud. So we're moving researchers into the cloud to analyze the data in a secure manner as well. And again, the focus, participants as partners, but also people in communities who have been left out of medical research in the past. And we've defined as underrepresented in biomedical research. So to give you a little sense of the data that we're collecting, our current protocol is we recruit anyone eligible if you're 18 years or older living in the US. And we do an authorization for electronic health records. So we connect with participants' electronic health records. We have surveys, we have some basic lifestyle overall health surveys. And proud to say, since the beginning of COVID, we have had a monthly survey tracking people's experience throughout COVID. So it's a monthly pulse check through the app to just check in on mental health and well-being for our participants. And then we do physical measurements, biosamples, and optional if people are interested in giving their wearable information to connect with their Fitbit data. So these are all the data that we're collecting from our participants so far. And then again, our commitment to participant diversity. Currently, 80% of all of us participants are categorized as underrepresented in biomedical research. And if you're a researcher interested in more of the details, I have some source links and you'll get my slides at the end. But researchallofus.org will give you some more detailed information about which data is available for research. And so the other half is once we have the data in, participants share their data. We have an extensive curation pipeline that securely cleans the data. And then we have our public resource where participants, public alike, can come to researchallofus.org to learn about, excuse me, the data that we have available, for research. And then we have our researcher workbench, which is behind the secure wall, where researchers have just apply for access, and they get access to all the data that's available. And then research underway, we have a projects directory. So it's a really good way for patients, public, anybody who's interested in knowing what research is going on. They can visit our projects directory, where you can see a full range of the projects that are happening and which health studies which health topics are being considered. And then where I spend many of my days is our tools and resources for data analysis. So we provide workspaces for researchers to set up and build their cohorts. We have a data set builder that has some pre-populated analysis. And we're also built off Jupyter notebooks, where people can conduct analysis in their notebooks. And then where we spend a lot of our time as well is in the Workbench User Support Hub, where we do learning, training, support, and guides. I'm going to take a breath and have a sip of water. So those are the tools and resources for data analysis. And then a picture of where we are today. So we launched the beta workbench in 2019 or early 2020. And we have 3,000 registered researchers from 400 institutions across the US, and about 2,400 active projects, and some top conditions being studied. You can see cardiovascular disease, hypertension, mental health, cancer, diabetes. Should sound familiar, and 65 plus peer-reviewed journal articles. So that's what is all of us. So just to transition into how human-centered design shows up in all of this. So, you know, you've got three main user groups. We have our participants who are participating and donating their data. Then we have our staff who are working at our health provider organizations and our community partners who are engaging with participants. And then we have our researchers who are leveraging the data. And our goal is always to serve all three of those in an integrated way, so that each knows about the other. So I'll spend a little time about here. This is known as the colorful chart that Sophia and I have gone over, but it really encapsulates what we do at all of us in our human-centered design process. It mirrors very similar to the ISO definition, but we have 4 ongoing processes and services on the program, where we identify insights, we concept, test, and define solutions, and then we support the design and implementation of our solutions. And then importantly, and a growing part of the design world and the human-centered design world is efficient operations. And so we have a dedicated operations team who's making sure that when we're interacting with participants, staff, researchers, that they're getting the care that they need and the compensation that we want to provide to them. So to take a few stops here, I know some of you are part of a larger consortium. Many of you are similar to ours, and so a lot of these ongoing processes and services function in an ad hoc manner. So we can make them modular, so we can identify insights. We can do all these pieces separately, but we have a lot of handoffs. So one of the beautiful setups of our process so far is to be able to hand off to our other partner teams across the organization to keep coherence. And we were just setting up this process now, but before we had a lot of different teams talking to participants, talking to researchers, learning, and not always bringing back that feedback into a central place. So really trying to find a way so that we're respecting the time and expertise of our users. We're not asking for the same question twice. We're not, asking a question, getting feedback, and not acting on it. I'm going to pause for one moment. I have a little tickle in my throat, which is not great timing. So overall, we have this 4-step process. And at the bottom, if you're interested in some more of the details, we have what we call a UX toolkit, So we have things like personas, journey maps, experience principles, which serve as guiding principles similar to our core values of participants as partners. We have experience principles like with, not for, and some of the traditional user experience principles that you would hear. And then we have UX metrics. So we have some analytics practices where we look at customer satisfaction, we measure system usability scales, and we do single use questionnaires, another one that we can ask. So we're building all this infrastructure, and at each of these columns, our participant and public involvement is very present. We don't move from one column to the next without at least a checkpoint with a minimum of a set of participants. I should note too, we have a range of participant groups. We have our advisory board panel, which is similar to the PPIE, who are advising the program on the governance and the structure and the overall direction. And then we also have participants and researchers who volunteer to work on more of the screening testing. So if we have 2 screens, we do some A/B testing with another pool of users. So we give people options on how they want to engage. So that's always another thing for PPIE to keep in mind of people want to participate at certain levels, and they want to do more or less of, and just giving them freedom of choice goes a long way. And then some of the successes that all of us, and this is in particular on the researcher experience where I spend my time, we have plenty of ways to get feedback. So we have a customer service help desk, which provides one-on-one support, and we help people with even simple access management problems, but even getting started in using the data, we provide them with support in that way. Education and training, we're building up webinars, tutorials, instructional materials. We have demonstration notebooks that people can use and copy to get familiar with the data. So we're all about reducing the barrier to get started for data analysis. Then we have a community support forum. So this is the magic where people start to answer the questions for each other, and we can submit questions as well and be moderators in that space too. And then most recently, my group has been working on what we're calling rapid iterative studies, which are similar if you're familiar with design sprints, where we work on 3-week cycles where the team conducts online interviews with 5 to 8 potential users. It could be researchers, participants, staff, because the first 3 are mostly focused on those existing customers or users or researchers. The rapid iterative studies are more focused on who's not here. It's really important as we're building these equitable systems not to assume that the people who are present are the audience that you want to be growing. There's a whole universe of people who may not be with your community just yet. And then I have 2 slides here. This is one about our community and provider partner network. These are all the groups that we work with on the participant experience, that work on the participant enrollment side of the work. And then this is the full landscape of our consortium members. And so I look at this as the opportunity slide. One of the biggest challenges is really coordination. How do you get, I didn't actually count, I'm sure there's, I don't know, 50 or so on here, but how do you get this many people thinking about human-centered design in the same way and approaching it in the same manner? And so we're just getting started by building up these processes and building toolkits and SOPs and best practices and just general guidance for people who want to be, conducting their own user research. The best people to do some of this user research and human-centered design processes are the people who are closest to the end user, and in some cases the staff who see participants every day at their health center or at their hospital. And then I couldn't have this talk without all the amazing humans that I work with every single day. This was my Our Future slide, because the future's right here. This is our team, the Division of User Experience. We have four branches within our division. We have strategy that functions as this sort of human-centered design strategy. function. We have operations I spoke about, user research, people who are conducting those in-depth interviews and really getting to know our end users. And then we have an analytics function who's on the back end, on the platform, tracking how the product is being used and who's using it. So I'm happy to say we've almost doubled in size since the beginning of the year. So also, if anybody wants to talk about growing and scaling a team, I'm happy to talk about that, the joys and opportunities that exist there, and the challenges, but mostly the joys. So then, getting started with HCD and your project, just to wrap up my slides here. There are many ways to get started, and Malvika, to your question, I think any time is the right time, as long as you really have your footing in place. Getting the right people. I have here as the first thing: find your allies, find the people who yes agree in words that we should be prioritizing the end users' needs and interests and motivations. It's one thing to agree in theory, but it's another to really get going. And so once you find that close group, begin to show, don't tell. I think one of the biggest lessons that we've had from growing this practice is just to start developing processes and services based on what you're seeing and what your colleagues are explaining to you. Because the more you can demonstrate the utility and the benefit of listening to your community, the more you can do and the more that you can grow. And then, start today. If you are looking for encouragement, I'm on Twitter and all these places, and I'm happy to, get you going, because everyone, needed to start somewhere at some point. And just want to end with this quote. I can't find the origins, but hopefully I can relay back to you all soon. But the only metric you need is how well you've solved someone's problem. It can begin to become overwhelming when you're building up a research program, and of course there's all sorts of reporting and evaluation and milestones and numbers that you need to get back to the powers that be. But as you're adopting human-centered design, your job is to be as curious and caring for the people you're building for as much as possible, and you'll know it. You'll know how much you're helping by the way that your community shows up and the people are participating, and how you move from, our chief medical officer has a great saying of moving from transactional to transformational. Building up these research programs are not meant to be transactions. They're meant to be long-lasting, enduring relationships within the community. And so I think that is where I ended my slides, which hopefully that's enough for questions. But thank you all so much for hearing a little bit about what we're doing at All of Us.
Thank you so much, Bea, for presenting on it. So we have ample opportunity for questions to pop up. I did want to draw attention back to a toolkit question that was asked by Malvika earlier, that a few other people have sent me questions on. So to kind of follow up from Malvika's earlier question, are there some toolkits for projects that have not started by building in a workflow, so that those toolkits can assist in either the beginning or retrofit the human-centric process, so to be respectful, to have respectful involvement of patients and research processes?
Yeah, I may ask that to you. I don't know if anything exists, but part of my SSI fellowship is certainly to explore what that toolkit might look like. Janestra Ferrara is another SSI fellow as well, working on UX UI design, and she's working on an workflow integration toolkit, which will probably have a lot of good insights. So happy to share, but I don't think it exists yet. Just maybe what I put in that one slide with the overlay. Yeah.
I'd love to kind of take that question, lead into, can you speak to the methods of the kind of human-centered design process that you'd suggest being part of research?
Yeah. So oftentimes getting started with these projects, you'll hear the phrase hallway testing, And this is where the friends and family, ask anybody about your product or service just to get another human looking at it. So to get started in methods, there's some short interviews you can do. I've even seen people, actually walk down the street and say, hey, have you ever heard of all this research program, or, insert PPIE or AIM RSF, what do you think about long-term conditions, in doing some street research? That's also an opportunity to get started. But then there's some more advanced, we have usability.gov is in the States, a great resource that has a bunch of methods that you can pull from. But really, I would say get started and see which ones get you the information that you like. And I try not to get too hooked up on which methods, just find the ones that work best for your community.
Awesome. So we've kind of finished the formal part of the talk. So I will stop the recording now. Before I'll stop the recording first, and then Ariel, would you like to kind of ask your question off mute to Meg?